Welcome to Morning Joe with Tom, with your host, Thomas Chappell. Get ready to listen to real-life stories from inspiring leaders who have overcome incredible challenges to rise to the occasion. If you're ready to add some pep to your morning with a new outlook on leadership, then grab your cup of coffee. It's time to be inspired. Here's your host, Thomas Chappell.
Hey, Patrick. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you being in, and you're such a busy person nowadays, and all. I know you got a lot going on. So, let me talk to my listeners a minute, just how we kind of met. I was introduced to Patrick Suarez. I believe it was through LinkedIn. Is that right, Patrick?
I think so, or it might have been a reference. I meet people in various different ways.
Yep. So, and at this point in time, I was bird dogging for some help for a GSA schedule, and you happen to be, as I say, a godsend in my life at that point in time, because we were definitely hurting at the moment. So I really appreciate that. But for the listeners, Patrick, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that makes you so special to all of us?
Well, I have been in government acquisition, purchasing, contracting, however you want to call it, whatever verb you want, for 47 years. This Friday is my 21st anniversary doing this company, doing GSA, and I kind of wandered into it. I went to work for a small business in Dayton, Ohio, and no, it was actually Columbus, Ohio, and they say we want a GSA contract, and at the time I had never heard of that. So I phoned around and okay, so I got them that and went to another small business, and they said, we want a GSA contract. Well, this time I knew what it was. And so I got them that. And so unfortunately, these small businesses didn't really know what they had, and some of them didn't really listen to advice, and they all closed the door. So I'm going home. It's mid-November of 2002, and I'm on my way home at noon. I got my walking papers, and I'm thinking, if anybody needs help with this GSA thing. So I zipped home. I got the domain name gsaproposal.com for $35. I put up a rudimentary website. Trust me, I'm no web designer. But it had everything that I knew up to that point. And, and the phone started ringing. And my first client, I remember him, was the brother of a famous author. There is a novel out there, if you've never read it, it's one of the great American novels called The Memory of Running. And that's quite a story how that came to be, through the good offices of Stephen King, of all people. Anyway, so this is this guy's brother. And so I got him a GSA contract for marketing, and then I got a job. I was a contractor in Columbus, Ohio, sitting at my desk at this DLA, Defense Logistics Agency building, and my cell phone rang. Hi, are you the GSA guy? Well, here I am, getting paid by the government. Let me call you back. And okay, so I'd run into a conference room or a restroom or something like that. And after a while, the job was good, but I realized if I'm going to do anything with this, I really have to quit the day job. So I did. And it's one of these endeavors that slowly escalates. People talk, and they were happy with me, and they got on schedule, and it just kind of built from there. I hired a gal in 2007, Jenny, and she happens to be my younger son's significant other, and she had just left a job. She was a paralegal and saying, "Hey, you want to work for me?" She did, and so it just kind of built up. Over time, you would do. I've never done this schedule. Okay, now I have, and so it just built up from there. And you come into a company. Um, they always say, you form a company, you always have an exit strategy. Well, I don't have one yet. And, I'm still vertical every morning. So this, you meet a lot of really neat people, you meet a lot of interesting people. And, sometimes you meet some folks who are just not completely eye to eye with you, but you have to concentrate on the fact that they're relying on me to help make them successful. This is real to them. This isn't, excuse me, playtime or, I mean, you know, people have their futures in my hand. It's, putting it, right out there. So I have to remember that. I'll tell you, there was a real, almost religious moment though. When I joined LinkedIn, I saw my clients. I'd never seen them. This is one of these internet things where you talk on the phone, you do email, you get to know people, but you hear voices. Now I'm seeing faces, and that really got to me. That that meant something when I saw these faces. So, things are a little rough, and you just remember, there are these faces, and they're looking at you. So that's how it happened.
Oh, wow. So it was kind of a slow roll at the beginning and word of mouth, but because of the success, everybody started kind of coming to you, and you kind of grew out from there. Is what I'm
Right,
hearing.
right, and not speak ill of people who aren't in the room, but there are folks out there who treat this as some sort of a money grab. And so I've had a lot of refugees, if you will, from people who had to start all over again to get help. And it, people say, "Well, why do you do this?" And my response is, "Why do you go an accountant when you do your taxes?" Because they know where the bodies are buried. They know the little ins and outs. They know the rules that you don't know, and they can, help you, go through the test of fire and water. So, um,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, this is about people.
Yeah. And, I think that's what brought me to you, because I, listened to what you had to say, and you've got folks that advocated that you did what you said that you would do, and all. And, I've actually enjoyed the process. It was, uh, honestly, this was probably, and it's because of your framework and the way that you do business, it was one of the easier uh, things that I've done, because you know so much about what's going on, and you have a way of streamlining everything. I mean, I hear people all the time talk about this kind of stuff, and the panic they go through, the all of the different things. So yeah, it's I have to say, I love your process, and it works.
Yeah,
So
thanks. Well, I'll tell you, and I said this is about people, and it is. Two biggest male role model influences in my life, how I do business. First, my father, who was an IRS agent for 32 years. And brother, did I hear some dinner table stories? Um, and, dad was the son of immigrants from Spain. And in fact, my grandfather came over on the Lusitania, of all things. And, um, dad just he was on the job. He'd go to work in his little necktie and he'd come home, and on Saturdays he'd mow the grass. And, I saw an example of work, with my father. And then I was fortunate enough, just by chance, to attend and graduate from DeMatha Catholic High School in the DC area. And my freshman world history teacher was Morgan Wooten, who was an up and coming high school basketball coach. At the end of his career, Morgan ended up in the Hall of Fame. He's only one of two high school coaches in the Basketball Hall of Fame. And he was a tremendous influence. I traveled with a team. I was okay at basketball. I wasn't good enough to make that team, any of the years I was there, but I was Morgan's statistician. So I was all over the place. And the highlight was when we beat Kareem Abdul-Jabbar when he was in high school. It was his only loss. It was to us. But the thing about Morgan was win with class, lose with class. He always talked about class, dignity, respect, and he led by example. The guy, when he died almost 4 years ago almost, was rich, but you know what? Morgan never changed, and neither did my dad. My dad became, at the end of his career, a diplomat in our embassy in Mexico City, and neither one of those men changed. They were the same people when they found all kinds of success as they were at the beginning of that. And that's something I really remember. So, my kind of guideline is, if you're going to do something, pretend coach is standing there, would you still do it? So,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you've been in this process for some time. What are some of the changes that are happening today that, that the listeners should really kind of know about as they start contemplating this GSA schedule?
Well, and that's a great question. Two that I can think of. And the first one emanated from the fact that before October 1, 2019, all of the non-medical, what they call schedules with GSA, were individual. So there was a schedule if you had computers or computer services. There was one for project management, program management. There was one for environmental work. There was one for, lab equipment. You get the idea. There were like a dozen and a half of these things. And sometimes they would be at war with one another. And this reached a head in 2009 when nobody could get anything through with the project management schedule, because the guys up in Seattle would look at the statements of work they were saying and say, oh, no, this is IT work or it's some other work. And so that went on. It kind of settled by around 2011. And then in 2016, they combined all of those service schedules up in Seattle into one bigger schedule. That helped. And then, so big deal number one happened October 1, 2019, when GSA combined all of the non-medical schedules into one giant schedule called MAS, Multiple Award Schedule. So if you did different kinds of services, let's say program management, environmental studies, and IT services, and believe me, there are companies out there that do this, they are that mixed. And so you didn't need different schedules, you just needed different, what they call special item numbers within one contract. That was mammoth. That saved a whole lot of heartache and headache and doing things over again. So that one was a big deal. The second one is happening right now. We're in the middle of it. And once you have your GSA contract, and we can talk about what that is and what it means, then you have to post your contract so that the government agencies and other contractors can see it. There's no point in getting it if nobody knows it exists. So there is currently a method of posting this contract so that people can see it. And it goes to a website called gsaadvantage.gov. And think of GSA Advantage as Amazon, but only for government agencies and the military. So what's happening now, when you get your contract, your award, um, we are currently using an old 16-bit DOS program converted to Windows to upload this. And it's a headache, it's slow, and people have been trying to improve it for years. They tried to improve it, I think it was around 2010 or somewhere around there. And it was a colossal failure, a big headache. So here we are at the end of 2023, going into 24. And this time they're doing it differently. Um, I don't want to get in too much of the nuts and bolts of this because it's not terribly interesting when you get down to that level. But it's a huge change, and you start actually thinking about how you prepare your proposal with the end goal of getting it up there. So the process to prepare your proposal for GSA is changing, and the way to get it to award and automatically posted is in process now. And what I've seen of it so far, it looks like it'll make sense. I sort of feel sorry for GSA's vendor support center because they're taking all the calls on, we're trying to do this, and well, those people deserve, a Mountain Dew and a gold ribbon. It's just it's a big change. So if you want a GSA contract and if you sell a government, you really need one. Um, just know that this change is coming, and in the long run, it's going to be way, way better.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So definitely at the end, I want to provide some links there for folks in our show notes that will, whenever we post it out there, there'll be show notes on YouTube for it so that they can connect with you on this topic. But I really got to speak on another topic with you that little bird kind of told me about, and that is that I hear that you're a musician, and not just a musician, but you've also dabbled a bit in radio. So what can you
Yeah,
tell us about those two stories?
yeah, it's kind of interesting. My mother sang opera when I was growing up, and she had this beautiful soprano voice. And so when I was a little kid, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, I heard a lot of opera, and she'd sing along with it while she was doing housework or whatever she was doing. And so I grew to love the music. Um, I love opera, but ironically, not what she was playing. She played a lot of Puccini, and outside of Turandot, if you're an opera lover, I'm not a real Puccini fan, but there's that. So I sort of was predisposed. I was your typical teen in the '60s. I graduated from high school in '66, which was just the dawn of, the Doors and Hendrix. And I was there. The Beatles came to be when I was 15, 16. I was there to see this and hear this. And, but then I entered the military in the spring of 1969. And I turned on the radio, and there was this program, a 1 hour classical music program. And I heard a piece called "The Pines of Rome" by Ottorino Respighi. Now, if you're listening to this and you know classical music, you know that piece. It's probably the most exciting 21 minutes in classical music. It's just a revelation. And so I ran downtown to Dayton, Ohio, the next day to buy the record that had been played. And I listened the next night, and I loved it. And it just kind of escalated. And I wanted to do something with this. And I had been a radio major in in the fall of '66. So, I was on the air for shows and that sort of thing. And so it's 1973. I'm almost a year out of the military, and I asked my then new wife, Jeannie, I said, we've been to hear the Dayton Philharmonic. Doesn't Springfield, Ohio have an orchestra? It did. So we visited there. They had a brand new conductor, John Ferrito, and the image of a conductor is, a stuffy man, tall, thin, with a white mustache and white hair, and an overbearing manner. And John was 5'6", on a good day, and Sicilian, and had this incredible sense of humor. And he was a marvelous conductor, marvelous musician. So we went to the first season, and then I happened to call the orchestra, and I said, "How come you guys aren't on the radio? The Dayton Philharmonic's on the radio." And she said, "Nobody ever thought about it." "Oh, really?" So long story short, I said, "I'll do it." Keep in mind, I never did it before. And, but, I was around a lot of microphones and setups. And so I called Bob Conrad with the Cleveland Orchestra with WCLV. And we used to go to Blossom Music Center, and Bob and his team would record all the concerts, the Cleveland Orchestra concerts. So he called me back and he said, "Look, if you want to come to the production studio underneath the shell at Blossom Music Center, we could show you how this works and what we do." And I did. Um, and I thought, okay, I'll do that. And I did. I got lucky. See, you learn things as you do, right? I didn't go to
Mhm.
school for this or anything like that. So what I discovered, the first concert was Mahler's Symphony Number 4, which is Mahler is this big, exciting, sometimes bombastic composer. The Fourth Symphony is very kind of lightweight and quiet by comparison. So we set up for rehearsal on Saturday afternoon, plugged everything in, and I heard a radio station over my headphones, WIZE, booming over the music. And I thought, oh no, oh no. Well, as it turns out, I was using ungrounded microphones, and all those microphone lines were acting like a great big antenna. And I got lucky because they signed off at sundown. So I was able to record the concerts. Um, and then I started writing about the concerts, and buying a ton just over the years, tons and tons and tons of LPs. You learn classical music by listening to it. And if you want to learn music theory, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. So then I started writing about the music in the local newspapers. And, it was just something in my blood. I met a lot of famous soloists. Um, I got to tell you this story. It's just a tad bit risque, but I had my tape recorder set. Everything was in, the audience was in its seats, the orchestra was on the stage, and we were waiting for the concertmaster, John Schmerelli, to come out and tune the orchestra for John Farito to come out and conduct. So I'm sitting in my position. The hall is dark, the stage lights are on, and I heard this. I turn around, it's John Farito. What do you want? He said, "Come here, I got to show you a score." And I said, "Do you think this is a good time for this? It's like 5 minutes until you're supposed to perform." "Oh, we come over here." So here comes Schmerle down the stairs toward the dressing room. Says, "Hey, are you coming up to work?" And "Yeah, I got to show you the score." So, okay, so, we go in John's dressing room. He pulls out a Playboy and says, "How'd you like to score with her?" So we're laughing like, "Are you serious, John?" And we didn't realize this. The audience heard us laughing because the orchestra was quiet, the audience was quiet, and it dawned on us, maybe we should be going out and doing what we're paid to do. So, but John, yeah, John was a marvelous guy. And Charles Wendelkin Wilson, Neil Gittleman. Neil Gittleman has built the Dayton Philharmonic into a real machine. And if I leave anybody with, I'll leave them with this regarding classical music in this country now. When I started listening to this music, Tom, you had the big five orchestras.
Mhm.
Cleveland, Chicago, Boston, New York, Philly, right?
Yeah.
And at this point, you really can't tell in performance the difference between the LA Philharmonic, the Minnesota Orchestra, the Atlanta Symphony, Chicago Symphony. Um, this country is blessed with dozens and dozens and dozens of orchestras. It used to be a big deal for an orchestra, a regional orchestra, to say play the Sixth Symphony of Gustav Mahler, this gigantic 75-minute beast that's hard to play. Well, you know, I recorded the Dayton Philharmonic, they knocked it dead. In Dayton Philharmonic, kind of, you would say like a second or third tier orchestra. There are thousands of musicians. If you have an orchestra in your city, go, because the odds are really, really excellent that you are going to hear a massively wonderful, note correct performance.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. I've got to attend one in my life. Besides my kids, of course. We all go to their music rehearsals, if music is the word that you call
Oh
it.
yeah. Well, it's the funny. Yeah, it's a funny thing. I saw a meme on Facebook that really kind of hit me. It said, if you want this, and it showed a symphony orchestra of adults, you have to have this, and it showed a youth orchestra. And yeah, sometimes youth orchestras can be kind of an adventure. But you know what? Those kids grow up, they get teachers who are professionals, and you end up in an orchestra. And um, Dayton had a principal horn player, Richard Johnson. The guy was unbelievable. I mean, he was something out of this world. And to have a principal horn in an orchestra that good kind of anchors the whole brass section. This guy is now the assistant principal in the Houston Symphony.
Mhm.
And that's a big deal.
All right. All right. So, I've really enjoyed our conversation here. And I would like to, before we kind of close out, I would like to kind of ask if there's any kind of parting information that you might want to give to the listeners. Usually, past guests have talked about different books that they could read, uh, what they're reading now, uh, things of that nature. Do you have anything like that you would like to share?
Yeah, two things. One, if you're interested, and you should be if you want to sell to the government, in getting a GSA contract, my website is gsaproposal.com. And my email address is pat@gsaproposal.com. That's in the singular. So just go to gsaproposal.com and you'll see my contact info there. The other thing, I just recently watched the movie Oppenheimer. And as it happens, from 1984 to 1995, I worked in this nation's nuclear weapons program,
Mm.
and as a contract supervisor. And it people have all kinds of misconceptions about nuclear weapons, most of which aren't true. Um, it's one of these things. I remember when I told my mother that I was going to get that job, she went, "Oh, Pat." I said, "Look, I want to leave Los Angeles. I want to come back to Dayton. They happen to have a plant there that did the initiators and actuators." And I said, "I want to go home, and this is how." And but the movie Oppenheimer, I'll say this: it is about it's as much about the Trinity blast as Field of Dreams is about baseball. Field of Dreams is about father-son relationships. Baseball is just the vehicle through which it flows. And
Mhm.
Oppenheimer is not about the Trinity test, although you see some sort of representation of it, the 1 hour and 59-minute mark of the film. But it's about the attitudes, the vanity, the all the behavior that surrounded the fear, um, prejudice, that was occurring while we were racing to make this weapon work. Um, it's a 3 hour movie and it doesn't feel like 3 hours, but it's a real good study in human behavior, and about a very, very complex man who had his own issues and had this responsibility of helping the U.S. win World War II. So it's definitely worth your time. And no, I haven't seen Barbie, so I did see Oppenheimer.
Yeah, I'm sure that that's at some level a human experiment as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, it sure is.
But well, Patrick, I've really enjoyed having you on, and I thank you for being a guest. And I know my listeners will love you. We will make sure that we put all these links into the show notes for folks so that they can get access to it. And by the way, if you actually have anything recorded, I'll probably ask for a link to that so that people can listen to that as well. Share your gift with the world a bit better. And I just really want to thank you.
Thank you, Tom. It's been a pleasure, and I'm always available. If you send me a note or an email at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, you'll get an answer. Because I'm not watching
Absolutely, and I'm
baseball
proof
yet.
positive of that.
Yeah.
I am
Yeah,
definitely
yeah, there you go.
positive of that, so I can say that that's true. So, well, Pat, thanks. And you have a great day.
You too. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for listening to Morning Joe with Tom. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. See you next time for more real-life stories and inspiration on Morning Joe with Tom.